Hi, in this video I would like to show you another development in AI area that you can actually try by yourself. So ChatGPT is a tool known and used by many people by now, especially in tech area, but for now at least there is no way to input an image to ChatGPT and ask for help with analyzing it. It probably will be a thing in the near future, as OpenAI states that internally such tests were conducted successfully. Unfortunately, we don't have access to such possibilities with this tool yet. And that's where Jarvis and Hugging GPT appear to be another interesting improvement. Jarvis is a Microsoft's project in collaboration with Hugging Face, and generally speaking it is a system that connects large language models like GPT-4 with all kind of specific purpose machine learning models, for example for image recognition or object detection. And today I would like to show some basic capabilities of Jarvis and guide you step by step on how to download and configure it on your local machine, so you can easily try it out. So let's get started. I have Jarvis configured locally, and we can play a little to show you some basic stuff possible with this AI. Now I will start simple and paste an image of the car and see whether it can tell me what is in the picture. One important remark is that Jarvis can be configured in a few modes based on resources available on your computer. First minimal tier is the lightest and can be run with only 12 GB of RAM memory. But you need to remember that in lower modes Jarvis won't be as powerful as it can actually be. So be prepared that some answers can be actually not as bright as you would suppose, or it can even crash sometimes. There's also a way to select only those machine learning models from higher tiers that you need. For example, include all image recognition and object detection models, but exclude image generation models, and this way run higher mode with less resources. I will demonstrate how to do this at the end of this video. In my case, I am running standard mode without some unnecessary models for text-to-voice capabilities. And basically there are three defined modes: minimal, standard and full, but the full requires a lot of memory, like above 80 GB, so I suppose not everyone can run this, and I also can't run this on my local machine, so the standard mode is probably the target for most of us. Okay, so as you can see the answer is correct, but the question wasn't very hard. So now let's try to ask what is the brand of this car in the picture. Okay, so this is a little bit more impressive as it correctly defines this car as BMW. And as you can see also there are some insights of what models were chosen for this task and how they performed. Now one more example. I will paste an image of some fruits and vegetables and ask for some meal recipe based on those products. So it is a little bit more complex than the previous tasks, and let's see how it performs. As it turns out, it gives quite reasonable answer. So let's try something different and tell it to generate image of the food that was described. It should choose some image generation model like Stable Diffusion for this task. So let's check what will be the result. And well, yeah, the result is definitely a fruit salad. Definitely it's not perfect, but we can recognize what is it. And the task is correctly done, so great. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are some cases that this AI will not work or will crash or will result in really strange answers that are basically not answering your question. But I think it's a great start, and taking into consideration the fact that you can run it locally and that this is not the full version, so the full version will be much more robust and will result in better answers, I would say that those tasks were quite nicely done. So now we can go actually to the configuration part, where I will present you step by step how to run Jarvis locally. So first of all, we'll start with listing all the distributions of the Ubuntu in our system by running wsl-list. As you can see, I have one, so we'll install a new one in the version 18.04. This should work without any problems. I tried also on the newer version and it also worked. So in the instruction there is information about Ubuntu 16.04, but I guess any other newer version will also work without any problems. So we can download this, and after the installation will be finished, we can create a new user, enter the username, enter the password, and finish the initialization process. Right, now we can check if Git is installed in the system. It should be by default, but we need to make sure. because we need to clone the repository. And when we run git and it will display the help page, it means that it is installed. Now we can go to the GitHub page and copy the link for the repository and run git clone command with the copied link. Now the repository should be cloned quite fast, and we can go to the next thing, which is installing Anaconda. And Anaconda is Python distribution that helps with managing packages for the project, creating the virtual environments, and so on. I will put all the links necessary for this process in the description. I will also put some notes and mark the chapters so you can go step by step with all the commands and you don't need to rewrite them from the video. Okay, and after downloading the Anaconda script, we need to change its permissions. And to do this, we can run chmod +x with the name of the file to make it executable for us. And now we can type // to run the script. Now Anaconda should install quite fast. We need to accept all the things here and then initialize the Anaconda by typing yes. Now we can actually rerun Ubuntu and make sure everything works by typing conda. It should also display help page for us. And as you can see, it works properly. Now after the installation, we can go with the instruction from the Jarvis repository. So now we need to create a virtual environment for our project that will allow us to install packages independently. So you can have multiple virtual environments and in each of them the same packages or different packages, and it won't collide with each other. Now to do this, we can write conda create -n with the name of the environment and specify the Python version, in this case 3.8. After creating the environment, we can activate it. We need to activate before trying to run commands and install packages. So conda activate Jarvis to activate the environment, and now go on with the instruction. We need to install some packages with conda install, and it actually can take a bit. I've also cut some of the process just to make it quicker on the video, but in your case it will take a little bit, so don't worry about this. And after the first installation, it shouldn't cause any problems, but if it will, you can write about this in the comment, and I will try to help you with that. Now after this installation, we run pip install, and this actually can cause some problems, at least for me it did. 2 times, because I was installing Jarvis on 2 different Ubuntu versions, and in each case it gave this error. The error is pretty simple to fix. It is just about installing the GCC, which is a compiler, and to do this we need to install build essential package. But as you can see, the pip installation is going on, or the package installation actually. But there is a GCC error. As you can see, command GCC failed, no such file or directory. And this means that we need to just install the GCC, which is in the build essential package. And before installing build essential, we need to update, we need to run apt update to update our repositories, because in other case it will also cause error. As you can see, failed to fetch some packages because they were not found. So there is also a solution given. We need to just run apt update and then rerun build essential installation, and after this rerun the pip install requirements. And now it should all work without any troubles, but it can take a minute or 2 to install everything, so don't worry about this. Okay, so installation is completed. Now we can go on with the instruction. We need to download all the machine learning models, but before doing this, we need to install Git LFS, which stands for Large File Storage, which is an extension of Git to store large files like machine learning models. And to do this, we need to first get the packages from the repository. To do this, we can use curl command. I will also put this in the description so we can go step by step. And then we can just run apt install git lfs. After installation, we can go to models folder and run download script. It will download all machine learning models to our computer, and this will take a lot of time. I mean, really, you can go for a coffee break, but this can take like half an hour or even more if you have a little bit slower hardware. So be prepared for this and just don't worry that it takes that much. And now, as you can see, I've already downloaded all the models, so we can go on. And the next step is to actually do some configuration, because we are one step behind running Jarvis AI, and we just need a little bit tweak the config file to run everything properly. So we can go to server and then to config folder and find config.default.yaml file. You can run this actually in Visual Studio Code. If you have it in your path, you can write code and the file name, and it should run the Visual Studio Code, as in this case. But you can also change this config file in, for example, nano. So you can type nano and config.default.yaml. And now in the config file, we need to change two API keys. First one is for the OpenAI, and the second one is for Hugging Face. And to obtain the token, you need to create an account for OpenAI and also for Hugging Face. Accounts are free, but OpenAI API is not. It's charging you for every request, but these are really small amounts, so you don't need to worry about spending too much, and you can also set the limit. After generating the token, you can put it in the config file. And now there is one really important setting in here, the local deployment mode, because there are three modes that you can use: the minimal, standard, and full. And first of all, you need to check whether you have resources to run the proper tier. So for example, the full tier requires about, as I remember, 80 gigabytes of RAM memory. So definitely not everyone can run this. And on the other hand, minimal requires about 12 gigabytes of memory. For now, we'll stay in full mode, but I don't actually have resources to run the full mode, so you will see an error. And it's important to note, because it's really probable that you will see it also when you forget to change the tier to minimal or standard. And this way you will know that it is just about this setting that you need to change. At the end of the video, I will also show how you can actually run a little bit higher tier without having all the necessary resources, but we'll get to that later. Now, the last setting that you need to change if you are running Jarvis AI in WSL on Windows is local inference endpoint, and actually the host setting, because now it is set by default to localhost. It would be okay if we were running Jarvis in standard Ubuntu and not WSL. And in this case, we need to actually change the localhost to the IP address of WSL system. To get this IP address, we need to run the following command and choose the one from ETH0. Now, when we have this IP address, we can go back to the configuration file and paste it in. Okay, so finally it's time to run our server. And to do this, we need to copy and paste those two commands in a run server section. And both of them needs to be run in separate consoles, because they are starting a process that can't be terminated for everything to work properly. So first we paste the first command, and here you will see an error that I mentioned earlier, because we set the mode to full instead of minimal or standard, and now we have an information that the process was killed. And this means that we ran out of memory, so we need to come back to the configuration file and change the tier of our server. And as you can see in my file, I have already added an API key for OpenAI and token for Hugging Face, And of course you should keep it private, and I will delete them after recording. And you should remember that OpenAI API key can be used to charge you for the usage of an API, so you should also keep it private. And after changing the tier of our server, we can rerun the command, and now it should says ready. Awesome, so everything works correctly. Now we need to run second instance of Ubuntu, because this process must be running in the background. And in the second terminal, we can paste another command to start our server. And you need to remember every time you open a new shell that you need to activate the virtual environment, because in this case I forget to do this, and as you can see there is an error, so don't forget about this. And now our server is running, and the last thing we need to do is to configure a web application so we can easily access the chat, because our server is working as an API, so we can of course send a request for this with specified parameters and headers and so on, and it will work, but it's more convenient to set up the web application where we can just use it normally as ChatGPT, for example. To configure a web application, in this case we need to install Node.js and npm, which is a package manager. And one more thing to remember, if you are running this in WSL and you've already installed those things, those packages in Windows, so for example you have installed Node.js or npm, and if these are added to your environmental variable named path in Windows, you should go through one additional step, which is excluding those entries in WSL instance, because it can cause some problems, some conflicts with versions of npm or Node, and we don't want to do this. So first of all, we need to go to etc folder and then open wsl.conf in some editor. We can use nano for this because it's just a simple entry, and if this file does not exist, it will create this, and we need to add this entry anyway. In this file, we need to add the following entries. So interrupt in brackets and set append Windows path to false. Now save the file, and we'll now print the path variable. And this setting will not be activated until we restart the Ubuntu. So in this case, the path will contain every entry that I have also in my Windows system. And after the restart, when we print the path, it only contains entries that we've added in WSL. Okay, and now we can go back to the installation process, and first of all we will install NVM, which is Node Version Manager, and will help us managing different instances of Node.js. So to do this, we need to also use curl command and get the installation script, which also be put in the description, of course. And after this, we can use NVM, but we need to restart the shell. And as you can see, it's quite easy to install any versions that you want of Node.js. In this case, I've used an LTS flag, but as you can see in this website, you can also use, for example, stable or just specific version like 16 or 18. Okay, and after installation, we need to set one more setting in the configuration files, because our web application is also running in our local host, and we need to change the local host to our WSL IP address. To do this, we need to open index.ts file, which can be found in Jarvis/web /c config path. The only thing we change is the address, and we can save and exit the file. Now it's time to run npm install in web folder, and it should install all dependencies for our web application. Now there's one problem, because we've installed the latest version of Node.js, and as you can see, an error occurred while running npm install, which is caused by improper version of Node.js. To run this command without any problems, you should install version 16 of Node.js, and now we have actually version 18. To list all installed versions of Node.js, you can use nvm list command, and as you can see, I already have version 16 and version 18, and you should also have those. And to install the version 16, you just need to run nvm install 16. After the installation, there is a message that now we are using node 16, but if you don't have this message, you need to run nvm use 16 to use the proper version and not the latest one. And finally, we can run our web application with npm run dev. Now our Hugging GPT is working. We'll try to prompt it. And there's one more thing that we need to do, because as you can see there is a network error. It means just that the server is not running. So we just need to paste those two commands from the run server section in the instruction, and it now should work properly. We can just refresh the page and prompt it once again. Now when you have a minimal version run locally, it takes some time, so don't worry about this, everything is working, but when you give some more elaborate prompts, it would take a bit to answer. But as you can see, we now have our AI assistant, and in the server window you can also see all debug messages that the server is printing. So as I said in the beginning, I would also like to show you how to run only those machine learning models that you like, instead of running strictly defined modes. This way you can choose to run, for example, a standard tier without a few models to save resources, or add some additional to have a greater capabilities. It is actually very simple. What we need to do is go to server directory in Jarvis repository and open models-server.py file in some editor. It can be easier to open this file directly on Windows if you cannot access, for example, Visual Studio Code within your Ubuntu terminal. And to do this, you can open File Explorer and type $WSL$, find your specific Ubuntu version, and now you are already in the Linux file system. So we can find the repository and open the file. Okay, so in the file we need to find a function that loads all of the machine learning models, which is called load pipes. And it is actually just appending models based on the tier. So we have some models defined only for full tier, then only for standard tier, and only for minimal tier. But of course, the full mode is using its own defined models and all from the lower tiers. So the standard mode is using also its own models and those from the minimal tier. And now we can, for example, uncomment or comment out some models from the standard tier. In the configuration section, we can choose that we want to run the standard mode, and only those models that we uncommented are used in the process. So, for example, when we comment out all models from the standard tier, then we are just running the minimal tier. Now, by default, some of those models are already commented out, and you can uncomment them, but first you need to make sure that they are downloaded to your local machine. And to do this, we can go in the server directory to models folder and check by name if it is present in some of the directories. So we can get the name of the commented out model and check if it was downloaded. And if not, there is a way to do this. In the models folder, we need to just open the download script in some editor, and there is a list of all models that are downloaded while running this script. And we already downloaded all of those models in this list, but now if you want some other to be downloaded, we can clear this list and add there only those models that we want to download. And this way, when we once again run this script, it will download those additional models, and then we can uncomment this section in the models-server.py, and our server will be using those models. And that's all I wanted to show you in this video. I hope it will be helpful, and if you have some questions, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.